Welcome. Hi, I'm Mikki, and this is Mikkipedia, where I sit down and chat to doctors, professors, athletes, practitioners, and experts in their fields related to health, nutrition, fitness, and well-being. And I'm delighted that you're here. Morena team, happy Wednesday. It's funny, I just assume that you are going to be picking this up on the day that it lands, pretty much as soon as it lands, which would be Wednesday morning. I am Mikki, this is Mikkipedia, and we are 1 year into the podcast, which apparently that's quite a big deal, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to have a conversation with my mate Bevan McKinnon as a sort of a 1 year celebration of the Mikkipedia podcast. Mostly because he's a good mate, he's got a lot of awesome things to say, and we love to have a good chat. Also, he is the host of the Fitter Radio podcast, and anyone that has followed me from Fitter will also know that I'm the co-host of that podcast, and we've been running for over 7.5 years now. And the third reason that I wanted to have Bev on is because if it wasn't for Bevan, I wouldn't have a podcast, because of that opportunity that he gave to me all those years ago. So before we jump into a bit of a bio about Bevan, I just wanted to let you know that recipe access to my website is the best way to support the podcast, and I've had lots of people ask me about that. If you head over to williden.com, the sign up page, scroll to the bottom, you will see recipe access. So for less than a coffee a week, really, you get access to my recipe portal, which is updated on a weekly basis, my weekly email, access to my private Facebook page, and also the opportunity to pick my brain about anything nutrition related through our online messaging portal. It's a super sweet deal for you. It's awesome for me, and I always appreciate your support. So, Bevan McKinnon, he's an Ironman University certified coach, Triathlon New Zealand Level 3 accredited coach, Bike NZ coach, and a qualified net fit strength and conditioning coach. But he's so much more than that. He is the host of Fitter Radio podcast. As I've said, we've been around for several years, and he's so well versed in how to coach an athlete from all levels of ability, from your novice athlete right up to the elite athletes such as Braden Curry, Dr. Hannah Wells, Jocelyn McCauley. He has a wealth of experience. But he's just a decent guy as well, and he's such a laugh and super funny. So he has coached pro triathletes to multiple Ironman and 70.3 wins, and has been instrumental in helping a large number of age group triathletes achieve their dream of qualifying for Kona. Bevan himself won his Ironman age group race in 2016. He had a stellar year, actually, 2016, where he also won World Champ 70.3 and Ironman in March here in New Zealand, in Taupō. And we chat a little bit about that year, but so much more. We talk a lot about Bevan's background, what got him into triathlon in the first place, how he sort of transitioned from a triathlete to a pretty decent age grouper to an elite triathlete, to then become one of New Zealand's best known coaches, and what he's learnt over his time within that space. And there are some definite gems in here for anyone interested in either triathlon, endurance sport, or being a coach yourself. Bev has a lot of knowledge and shares some of that on today's podcast. So you can find Bev over on Facebook at Fitter, and their website www.fitter.co.nz, and same handle fitter.co.nz on Instagram as well. So without further delay, please enjoy my conversation with Bevan McKinnon. No, do you know, it's a legit radio station that our friends and Alex got us onto. So we went around, we were staying with them and on our trip down last time actually, and they've just bought the holiday home in Alex,
Yep.
and they're from Dunedin. So we turn on up and they don't have Wi-Fi or anything, but they've got a wireless there, and they click on the radio station, and we're like, what is this? It was this random mix of music. Like you'd play Blink 182, then you'd play Alice in Chains, and then you'd play like Betty Davis Eyes. And I'm like, this is a strange mix. And you're like, oh, it's Brian. It's Brian FM, and it's this dude in a room
shack
somewhere in Alex. Yeah, basically.
Actually, Lizzie's ex-boyfriend, Simon, the RB, the Red Baron, his uncle or grandfather has a small frequency radio station that he runs as well. So, quite same sort of thing. Like he's done it for years and he's got his own... Like as a DJ, you just do whatever you like, I suppose. No idea what he plays on it, so...
Well, and the funny thing is now, so it's playing in the background here, you can't hear it. So this is our default radio station, barely plays any music that either of us like, but you know how it's either Barry's playing something he really likes, I'm like, oh, it's all right. Then I'm playing something he's like, no way. So this is like this compromise. Both of us are a little bit unhappy.
You found common ground, though. You have found common ground over time. Mind you, it's your musical education has been, I think, a little bit steeper than his.
I think so. However, he is revisiting the 80s like no one else. So that's pretty exciting
your
for him.
80s or his 80s? That's a big difference.
That's so true.
Because his will be like
so true.
Echo.
It's my 80s.
Echo and the Bunnyman, and yours will be like Led Zepp or
Whitney Houston
or something like that. This is pretty cool. Where did you get onto this Riverside FM? So is it a recording platform?
It is a recording platform, and Bevan, much like, you know how Chris has been the making of you,
yes.
Fitter Radio. She launched us, basically. If it wasn't for Chris, we wouldn't be here on Mikkipedia, actually. Similar, I would not have a podcast if it wasn't for Barry.
Yeah, wow.
Because obviously, you and I he just did some research and just went, let's just try this one.
Yeah, okay.
And I'm like,
It's obviously a paid platform?
Paid platform, and so you can record. It's similar in like Zencaster that you guys used for a time, then just moved to Zoom. Yeah. But you get the separate channels. You get a couple of different options with the audio, I believe.
Okay, interesting. Because we went off Zencaster only because the video side of it hadn't been developed as much, and then it didn't really offer anything more than using Audacity and literally Zoom as such. But this actually looks, I'm going to mention to Chris Riverside FM just to look into it because, it looks like you're getting the dual audio channels coming in, everything. It looks pretty, and it uploads to the cloud straight away.
It does, actually. So post our conversation, I'll stop the recording because we are recording now. Because this is where the gold lies, Bevan. On our where we think we're we always have the preamble's always way better than the actual. But then it'll just say leave the browser open until it uploads. Yeah. And then it's just available. And then even if that doesn't happen...
That's why I stopped using Zencaster is because if it was a long conversation with someone and then we both had to leave the browser open until it actually uploaded. And so there was this... this period of awkwardness if the conversation had come to a natural end where we're looking at each other going, what do we talk about now?
Good call. I can't imagine you being awkward though, Bevan. Awkward's not really in the makeup of...
No, but there's always that period. If you've had a very lengthy discussion with someone, generally it wasn't so much the pros and so forth because there was always something to talk about afterwards. But if you've got someone who, let's say, a physiologist or a doctor of some description, and then you're like, "Well, thanks, that's great, wonderful to come on the show," and you have to have the sign off. So you say, you do, and. Best of luck with all your future research. Oh, hold on, don't hang up yet.
And then it would. What about that?
And just, boy, that COVID's a bad illness, isn't it?
Oh, I love it. So, Bevan, I wanted to get you on, obviously, for my 1-year anniversary of Mikkipedia. Legit, because if it wasn't for you, if it wasn't for Chris, you guys launched me to the world. And I mean, you really did. So anyone, if you're like, what the hell, blame Bevan and Chris. Yeah. So I just thought it would be great to jump on and have a conversation. It's funny too, because because as soon as I thought, I'd like a sort of just a platform, because Fitter Radio is awesome, but I'm just a bit of a geek around the nutrition and health stuff, which I don't want to bore the listeners on Fitter about my passion. Yep. So I'm like, I know, I'll just go and do it myself. And I thought, great, I'll get to talk to Bevan. Like, what would I talk to Bevan about? As if, there's so much ground that we can cover. And what I love, actually, is that when we jump on, like, I still learn things about you just from random little snippets of conversation. I'm like, oh, my God, did that even happen? So I figured that if I sort of get you to start right back at the beginning, I'd probably learn something today, too.
Do you know, I thought about this when you asked me to come on your podcast. I was like, it's going to be quite interesting because we've fallen to our roles, like and I don't know. Dare I say it, whether we knew it consciously or we didn't know it, way back in the day when you and I decided to do a podcast together, we knew that we had a chemistry when we chatted about anything, similar senses of humour, similar passions, similar interests. And then over the years, I think we've got, I know, look, as I say, whether we've got better at it or not, but we know exactly how to record a podcast. We both come in to our virtual room, or whether we're in person, we've got scraps of paper here and there and stuff like that, and we can just get it done. But this time around, it's interesting because I always, we've fallen into, know the bones of the show and where we're going with everything. So, walk us through all of that and it sort of, like the lead anchor as such. Yep. And then you play the co-host there.
Little sidekick.
Yeah. And then it's like, and then I thought, now we're going to change this around. So I can sit here and at some point I'll go, on that note, but not quite that note, but actually on a complete side topic, back to me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What do you think about me? Exactly. I did wonder actually as I was coming into the room, I wonder whether Bevan sent a Zoom link.
I was
thinking, in that general sort of
normal pattern.
Because that's the way we normally roll.
Normal pattern, no.
Yeah.
But yes, our podcast history is long and extensive, and it's one of the proudest things that I've ever been part of. I'll say that.
Yeah.
I think I'm exceptionally proud of the work that you and I and Chris have done together, and the body of work. It does feel like we've produced something that can last forever, that has a lot of interest in it. So it's been very easy for us to do what we've done over the years, which has been, and it's just been nothing but awesome fun.
Yeah, I know. And that's the thing. Like when we decided, I felt so honoured when you and Chris sort of mentioned to me that, have you ever considered doing a podcast? Would you do it together? Pretty sure that's how it went. Over a Date's Gone at Como Street Cafe. Yeah. That was before the low carb days. I think we were just that was sort of bubbling away in the background, but we'd still not quite reached that
Well, I
yet.
think it was, we'd just been moving through that period, and we knew that we'd done a few talks together publicly at different, events and stuff like that about a whole host of different things. And we just knew that we could, we had both of us feel that we enjoy playing a role of an educator and telling an audience about different things in terms of health and fitness and so forth in a podcast seemed to be a fairly... At the time, I thought it was a relatively simple thing. So I think so did you. And then Chris went away and did all the work. And since then, as you mentioned, without Chris, we would be nothing.
Nothing at all. Like there is so much work that goes on into the background, and
unbelievable.
Yeah, someone contacted me and went, so Mikki, talk me through, like, how hard is it to do a podcast? And I'm like, let me talk to Barry and get back to you, because, I've got the real easy part.
Yeah.
All I do is get on, I research a bit about the topic area or the person because they obviously interest and inspire me. And that's the easy part is that, but it's all that background.
I feel a bit guilty now. In terms of, because you and I are just playing to our strengths, absolutely playing to our strengths. Like occasionally, if it's a really late or early morning interview that I've scheduled because of time zones with people, it becomes a little bit onerous, but it's a chance to learn more from someone that I have a genuine interest in. It's purely a selfish passion, the podcast. From the content that I've sourced over the years has just been stuff I want to find out more about. So I'll reach out to that person next minute we do an interview, and my coaching practice has improved as a result of it. But I see Chris then slaving away with the real nuts and bolts stuff that is absolutely boring. And she doesn't, when she edits a podcast, she has to re-listen to it afterwards, because all she's doing is she's not listening to the actual content as such. She's just eliminating all the pauses and the ums and the ahs and whatever she needs to take out, improving the quality of the audio and stuff like that. That would drive me bonkers. I'd never do it.
Oh, no, because that's detail stuff. Bevan, have you always been that way? Have you always been the you just want to learn more, grow more? Like, is that something that you've always had, or is it something that sort of developed over time? Like, what's that like for you?
I think I have particular passion points, and sport and fitness has always been that one. And I think it was in my late 20s, early 30s, when I returned home from drinking my way around Europe and the typical Kiwi OE as such, that I realised I needed a career and got into the health and fitness industry. And then I think the thing that people have always said to me about having no formal education in that space is they're quite amazed with how much I know. And I don't say that egotistically, I just have forgotten or didn't actually realise how interested I was in that particular subject matter or space. And I have an antenna that goes up that seems to be able to collect was always aware of conversation or content or information in whatever form it comes in and around that space. And so I don't really have a very organised brain. I'm not particularly detail oriented, but I do seem to be able to act as a bit of a magnet to that the stuff that interests me. And from there, I find that because I'm passionate about it, I've got I'm not stupid, and because I'm very interested in it, I like to understand it, and therefore that's how I teach myself. I just stay aware of conversations and content and information in the spaces that I'm interested in, and because I think I do enjoy being a teacher in some regards. So coaching is teaching. I do like to then, I don't know, maybe there is part of the ego that enjoys education in that space as well. So being able to disseminate what I've learned to other people, which is probably why I've fallen into coaching. So not detail oriented though. Although in saying that though, around physiology, I like the science, and so I'm quite sciencey in that space, but not detail oriented, as you well know, Mickstar.
Yeah, I know. Did you finish high school?
Yes, yeah. So I would say I attended to the end of high school. I finished probably 2 or 3 years earlier than that in my mind. Whangarei Boys High School, so probably once I went through what was school certificate at 15 years of age, sixth form and seventh form were just there to represent the school in the different sporting teams that I was actually part of, which was basically all of them. So,
And then where did triathlon start for you?
So I can tell you exactly where it started. So I had a paper round. I was 13 years old at the time, and very, very active. My grandfather was a track and field coach in athletics, and so I'd always done athletics, albeit I was probably better at the maybe the field events more than the track events, although I didn't mind the long distance stuff. But I was a very active kid and played a lot of very serious soccer or football and tennis and cricket and table tennis and anything that I could do. But I was doing my paper round, and it was the Northern Advocate, and I had a Raleigh 20 bicycle, and it had, I can describe the moment. So I had tyres or inner tubes to the tyres that were solid rubber. So, because I kept getting flats, and that was interrupting how quickly I could get round my paper round. And at the end of my paper round, there was a hill that I would always have an argument with myself. Am I going to ride back up the hill today or not on my 50 kg Raleigh 20 bike with solid rubber wheels? And I remember delivering the last paper and seeing in the back of the paper with a sports section, and there was the Whangarei Triathlon was advertised. And I looked at that and I was like, oh, that's a one, I think it was maybe a 1,500 metre swim, probably a 40k bike ride and a 10k run. And I was like, do you know, I reckon I could probably do that. Because I could swim, never formally, but I could swim. And so I went home and I said to my mum, I said, I actually want to try to do this triathlon. And she oblivious to what swimming in the open water actually meant, because even nowadays she's terrified even that I'm going to die. And so I set about writing a training program for myself, because I'd learned a lot from my grandfather, and I remember diligently in my A4 notebook, I would write down exactly where I ran every day, every street that I turned down. I'd get up in the morning, I'd go to the local pool and I'd do a few swims. This is at 13 years of age, which I remember was quite odd. Yeah. And I trained for the Whangarei Triathlon, and I remember doing it and swimming in, I think I swim in board shorts. I remember just making it through 1,500 metres. 40 Ks was fine. The run off the bike was horrendous.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and that was what is that? 33 years ago, something today. So, oh no, 37.
Hang on, you've just aged yourself down.
Yeah, 37 years ago. So that's where I first.
Right, I had no idea that was your entry point into. I knew I'd learned something immediately. Your grandfather being a track,
yes,
a track coach, and so did he? Did he originally sort of inspire the running, the activity? Or was it just because Whangarei in the 70s, not much to do?
Yeah, well, yes and no. I don't actually remember. I just remember being every person who ends up doing sports competitively probably says the same thing, that you just were always fixated on sport. But I think for me, it's a little bit like I could express myself. Like my mum and dad separated when I was 7, and I think I probably, of all the 4 brothers in my family, I probably took it the hardest because I was 7. My younger brothers, of his 2 below me, didn't really feel the effects of it, I don't think, as much. And maybe my personality and so forth, I invested a lot into sport and exercise through that particular period, because it was probably a pretty healthy outlet for me, yeah, I'm probably a rather intense child as such. But that was that. It was just I was just good. I was just really good at all sports, and I could pick up I could do a sport within 2 seconds of trying it. And so when you can do that and you have success, then that becomes something that you enjoy. And so, that's sort of where I got into it all.
Yeah, and then subsequent to that, so you were 13 then, so, you got through high school. What happened after high school? How did you then get to the position where you were a professional athlete, Bevan? What did that journey look like?
Your listenership, Mikki, if they were to dig any deeper, knows that is a very, very loose way to refer to my triathlon career, but I never really took it seriously. I used it to keep fit for other sports, because the one thing that what made me relatively good as an age group triathlete was the fact that I just loved the process of training. You and I are very similar in the fact that we don't need to sign up for an event to train as much as we can allow ourselves to. So I think once I understood, well, look, I remember when I was playing football at about 13, 14 years of age, my football coach said to the representative team that I was in, he sat us all down and said, I'd like you all to do what Bevan does, which is go for 3 or 4 runs a week on your own outside of coming to practice 2 times a week. And all the other boys just looked at me and went, what a dick. But I remember I've got notebooks of writing down, as I say, every street I ran down, every workout I did, how it felt, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, look, I just think over the years, it's the passion for training and for the enjoyment of being fit that has, and as I said, I use triathlon to keep fit for all my other sports. And then it wasn't until my late 20s that I actually took triathlon seriously. I do it in the summer occasionally because I was only playing tennis or cricket and I'd be keeping fit. And there were not many races back then. I mean, there was probably 3 or 4 maybe events that you could get to over the summer, and they were spread out a lot. So it wasn't like there was a real season as such. So it wasn't until about my mid-20s that I started to maybe say triathlon was my summer sport.
Yeah, okay. And so what did you do between your 20s and 30s then? Like, you came to Auckland?
No, drank my way through the UK, basically. So I left school. So basically, all my friends went to university. I got a job in an insurance brokers, and that was, because back in that, I mean, you're not far off my age, Mikki, but I'm a little bit older than you. No, very few people went to university. A much smaller percentage of people went to university from whangarei. Most people went out and left at 15 and either got a trade, or you stayed on to about 17 and then maybe tried to get into an office job at somewhere or something like that. But most of my friends, close friends, went to university, and we made a bit of a pact and said, because we all wanted to travel, I said, well, I'm going to go work for the 3 years or 4 years it takes you guys to finish. And they said, well, when we finish, we'll all save up along the way and we'll all leave to go to overseas at the same time. So I left at 21. And because my grandfather was Scottish, I was able to access a longer visa to the UK than what we normally get as New Zealanders. And so I left at 21, and I think I came back eventually about 27, 28 to dry out.
Oh, mate.
Yeah, so I was away for a long time.
Yeah, but still active?
Yeah, I did a lot of, I played football overseas, relatively seriously, but then I still did triathlon, because when I went to the UK, it didn't take long for me to go down from living in London, and I met a girl and we ended up being in a relationship for a while, and I moved to Wales, and then I ended up staying in Wales for the longest period of time, probably 4 or 5 years, and it just so happened by coincidence she worked in a local leisure centre, so therefore there was a pool there. I was introduced to probably someone who I'd say is my closest mate now, is one of my friends, Jeff from Wales, and he was into triathlon, and then all of a sudden we did a lot of triathlon, and there was a really strong scene there, and in between drinking and going to the pub, we would go out on the bikes and train, and had a lot of fun doing it. So yeah, we did a little bit of triathlon through that particular era as well, along with what everyone does on their OE, which is mixing it in with travel and socialising.
Yeah, I love it. And then come back to New Zealand.
Yep.
Were you sort of like, what now? Or did you have a sort of a plan as to sort of how you were going to settle back into life?
Yeah, look, I did. It was a bit of an interesting phase of my life for sure, because all my friends, as I say, had gone to university and were into their careers as such. And we all sort of trickled back to New Zealand at various times. But I was very aware of the fact that I had done, as I say, I worked in insurance coming out of high school, and then worked in insurance in the UK and stuff like that, and thought, this sucks so much. This is so boring. I can't do this for the rest of my life. But I was aware that personal training as a career was starting to evolve a little bit. You could go away and do some qualifications that weren't, the length of a university degree or anything like that, and be qualified to do personal training. And I thought to myself, that could be me. That could definitely be me. So I came back, and not long after I got back, went back into insurance to get a job, but quite quickly started to research different offerings in terms of personal training and fitness and so forth. And it wasn't long before I got into an online program and ended up doing, I think it was about a 6-month program to do some strength and conditioning and personal training qualifications. And that was I thought, this will be me. This is where I'll end up. And at least I can work in health and fitness, which I know I'm actually excited about. And then that the next 30 years of my life will not be the most horrendous sitting behind a desk talking about car policies.
Yeah, for sure. And when you started learning in that space, Bevan, did that sort of spark that fuel that we were talking about before, about just wanting to know more? Like, was that when that first in this particular space?
Totally, because I actually realised very early on, because I'd always, when I was doing triathlon, I was reading all the magazines, like absolutely voraciously reading the magazines. I remember having discussions with my grandfather when I was young, because he was into strength work. Like, he was fixated with strength methodologies for his track and field coaching. He loved reading bodybuilding magazines and the like, and everything like that. And so I just remember talking to him about training and thinking about training and what could be done better. And I remember reading, stuff about Phil Maffetone, his theories about how he had coached Mark Allen. And I bought my first heart rate monitor when I was 25, not really knowing what it meant or how to use it. So I kept getting more and more information wherever I could around that. So by the time I got to this personal training course, I think I surprised myself at how much I already knew. So that meant, this reinforced the fact that this was definitely the place for me, because I knew very little about anything else in the world or life or anything, but I knew a fair amount more than what I had given myself credit for. And once they started the qualification, I was like, oh, geez, I don't even have to read the textbook on this. I know what that actually means. And as I say, it was at a quite basic level, but it was definitely where I started to realise, this is something that I love to find more about, and just keep going down that path.
Yeah. Now, did you have John Ackland?
Yes, of course I did.
Yeah, same, mate. God, I was so, when I bought it, I was so, I felt like I was smarter just owning that book.
Absolutely.
I couldn't understand a thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I still probably can't understand a thing. It is like one of those
books,
Power to Perform.
Yeah, Power to Perform. I think I had 2 of his books that I'd already purchased prior to that. I did have a small library of books way back in the day, man, would you?
Yeah.
It still blows me away now. And in moving recently from Auckland, we had all those books there, and they are still in the house of some description. And not that I've turned to them in living memory, but all that kind of stuff, knew about all the at that stage, the 3 full-time triathlon coaches in New Zealand.
Oh, yeah. Now, who were they?
That would have been Steve Farrell, Tony O'Hagan,
that's right,
and maybe Walter Thorburn were the ones in Auckland. And obviously, if you went to John Ackland, you needed to mortgage your house to pay for the cost of being coached by him. But, look, I mean, those textbooks were fairly groundbreaking way back in the day.
Yeah, they were. And what about your own sort of triathlon career then, Bev? Was it, beginning to ramp, because you said, you were playing tennis
You're
and other sort of
it,
sports.
Mikki. You talk about the career
do you know what? I think I might be, because I've got all these race statistics in front of me. And you've been described before as an elite
as
triathlete.
I know, and you know me better than that. You know me way better than that. When did when I first came back from the UK, because I was sort of in this state of flux and, starting to study and so forth, and a lot of my friends who, as I say, were trickling back to New Zealand. Some lived in Auckland, some didn't. I sort of didn't have a massive friend group. My girlfriend at the time had a lot more friends, and so I started training again. I thought, do you know what? I've always wanted to do the Ironman, and so I started training for the Ironman and said, I'm going to do the Ironman. And this is in an era when, I don't know if anyone who's a triathlete out there, they may or may not know this, but New Zealand, there were only 2 Ironmans around, so it was either Ironman Australia or Ironman New Zealand. And to qualify for Ironman Australia, you actually had to qualify by finishing a half Ironman before it. And I hadn't done a half Ironman, but Ironman New Zealand was different. You could just qualify, sign up and do it. So, yeah, I decided to coach myself to an Ironman, and I did that. I remember there was a long time between drinks. I did it, and then it took me a few years to go back again because I think I was, it started to get back into triathlon, but not doing as many Ironmans. I would have been like maybe 29 or 30 when I did the first one. And so my real serious period of triathlon training would have probably started in my early 30s, where I was consistently looking at it as my main sport. Like this is actually what I did. So I was relatively late comer to treating triathlon as my number one sort of focus.
And all the while personal training, working in that health and fitness space.
Yeah. And then you and I would have bumped into each other. So I remember I got the qualification and so forth. I never went personal training. I technically did. I was luckily enough, I started training for the Ironman and went to the local pool in Takapuna and was swimming there. You would have loved this, Mikki. So I used to do what you did when you swim. Yeah. I would get in and I would swim 3 times a week, 3 kilometres continuously. So no swim workout, nothing. Just get in 3 kilometres without stopping, get out. That was my workout, because I was thinking all you got to do is get fit enough to go a few 100 metres more and you're finished. But I remember meeting a guy, and he obviously could see I was training for triathlon, and he was a triathlete, and he had the personal training contract at that facility, which had a very small gym, but it had, in the terms of the agreement, you could do any kind of training across the facility. So he had actually built a private swim business and a personal training business out of the facility. And he was moving to Melbourne, and he said to me, you should apply for this job. I can actually shoulder tap the boss, Grant Schofield's father-in-law. So Prof. Schofield's father-in-law was the boss of the pool. And it was a done deal. I basically just walked in, did a quick interview. He left, and I replaced him. And that's where I started working as a personal trainer. I did a little bit of personal training, but mainly I quickly upskilled myself on swim coaching and became a swim teacher. And from there, because of the connection with the Schofields and so forth, worked there for a number of years. But when what was Vitality Works, which is where you ended up working with Prof. Schofield, his wife Louise Schofield and so forth, they shoulder tapped me and asked me to apply for a role as a project manager in, corporate wellness. And that's the trajectory of my working career to where we first met.
Yeah, okay. So, and at that time, triathlon was your thing.
Yeah.
Like you were training, you were racing overseas as well, right? So
yeah, sort of. Like I did, I think I remember qualifying. So I raced a lot. I raced a lot of New Zealand races, and I was getting a bit better. And I think the knowledge that I took from being a personal trainer and what I was able to do, and I coach myself. I haven't been coached extensively in my career. I think I've done probably 80% of my preparation for triathlon myself, and probably 20% with coaches. But yeah, I remember my first Ironman, I went like 10 hours and 20 minutes, which a lot of people, that's awesome. But I basically, it was like a 4-hour marathon. I basically walked the entire thing. But I remember thinking every year thereafter, I would take 15 to 20 minutes off my time. So I started to realize once I started to get down into like the 9:30s, and then I did a 9:15 that, and once I did a 9:15, I really committed to it. And I was like, this is back when 9:15 was probably the equivalent of what about an 8:55 is now in Ironman terms.
Yeah, totally.
That's when New Zealand Ironman had or Ironman in general, you could enter an Ironman and decide whether you wanted to race pro or age group.
Yeah.
So you didn't need a pro card or anything like that, because when I was doing the 9:15s and times around that, we all started together, all the pros, all the age groupers at the same time. And for a couple of years, I was swimming with the second pro pack. So I'd get out of the water with the second group of pros, and I was then able to ride with that second group of pros for the full 180 Ks, and then I'd fall away on the run in comparison to them. So I started to think to myself, if you can grab a ride with these guys over the swim and the bike, you may as well enter as a pro and just see what happens. The year after that, I entered as a pro instead of an age grouper, and I think I did in like 9:01 or something like that. And I actually got 9th pro and qualified for Kona as a pro.
There you go. Was that 2000? Was it 2009 or 2000?
Were you talking details before, Mikki? Because I cannot ever align dates with performances.
No, I get it. Because I've got a couple of like dates here, and oh no, wait, you raced Kona 2007. Does that sound right?
Yes, I did. Yeah. So
to then go back 9 years later in 2016.
No. So I would have qualified then. Yes. So I did it as an age grouper. Yeah, you're right. And then probably 2 years later, oh no, the dates are terrible with me. So I did qualify.
That's right.
I qualified a number of times and turned it down as an age grouper. And then I decided to go. And then I went, this is horrendous. This is the worst thing I've ever done in my life. So I shelved that. But I remember that it was either after that, I did qualify as I say, I decided to race as a pro on that one day in New Zealand Ironman and qualified and turned it down straight away because I was like, it was terrible as an age grouper. I would be an idiot to go and race this thing as a pro because I'll be the last pro in Kona. So why would I go and embarrass myself like that? So I remember turning it down, and I think Andrew Mikki from Boost Coaching in Auckland, actually, he finished one place after me and he took it to go and finish last pro in Kona or somewhere.
But what a great experience. Kona.
Totally. Yeah, I'd prefer to finish well down in the age groups than start in the pro race and then realise after 100 metres, oh, okay, shit.
Okay. So your first experience at Kona, Bevan, then was that enough to put you off for another however many years it took?
Yes, it was.
Well, because I obviously...
Totally. Yeah. Look, I must admit, like, the Kona thing for me was... I only wanted to do it once. I'm not someone who would... and I've only raced it twice. You know, I don't necessarily subscribe to... I need changes in stimulus. So I'm the type of person that very rarely in the same week will run the same running route or ride the same long ride route. I can't do out and backs. I just need constant change. And I just didn't... Kona's Kona. I mean, I had no idea how to prepare for the heat. I probably overbiked, definitely. I ended up suffering on the Queen K as everyone does, and going, shit, that was incredibly, incredibly hard. Why would I end up... And I wasn't competitive at that stage in the age group, and I sort of was moving towards the thinking of, well, if you can't go to Kona to actually really compete in the age group, would I spend $15,000 to go back here and do it year after year? So it was more, from there on in, I would have qualified in every New Zealand Ironman that I'd done subsequently, but I was like, well, I don't see the appeal of going back there until possibly I'm in a position to, or if I am ever good enough to actually try to go and compete for an age group podium or victory or anything like that. So, yeah, it was probably more a cost thing than anything. And also, it's a lot of money to pay for Yeah, to
just another
question
race.
your life decisions out on the Queen K.
Yeah, no, I get it. So what was it, Bevan, then, that sort of got you to the place where you were that athlete that was competitive, not just in terms of your own age group, but actually just overall? Like when did you sort of see things align and sort of come together for you?
I just think it was a continued thirst for understanding training methods and applying different strategies and changing things when they did or didn't work. But I would also suggest that the thing that, again, you and I both share is the love of the process and the love of the challenge of training. And I think one of my probably maybe more genetic predispositions that helps with this is I can tolerate a fair amount of load, and I'm not a fast twitch type athlete, and I think that's parentage more than anything, and therefore it lends itself quite nicely to the ultra distance events. And then I think a few things after, as I mentioned, we both worked for Louise and Clara Schofield as contractors and I was full-time. We went from what was Vitality Works as a corporate wellness company, and they went through the first recession, and therefore the first thing that's cut from businesses' budgets is the wellness budget, and so therefore I was made redundant from that role. And in the probably 6 months to a year working out what I was going to do next, Chris just supported me. I was doing a little bit of coaching, and Chris just supported me, and I ended up training virtually full-time for a year, and I made huge gains because I would get up and I would do a 25-hour training week in, week out, with very little racing for about a year. And then the next time I went to New Zealand Ironman as an age grouper without the pro men to bike around with, I think I did another 9-hour flat Ironman, and I was starting to think to myself, yeah, I'm actually I'm right up there now as a 40-year-old athlete or whatever I was by that particular stage. So yeah, I'll start to take things a bit more seriously, and maybe Kona's back on the agenda now.
Yeah, nice. And then around that time, was that when you sort of started developing the coaching business? Yeah,
I was coaching a bit, and it was definitely something that, as I say, it was still in that era where there were bugger all coaches. I mean, nowadays, as I say, if you do a massage, everyone's now a masseuse, or if you receive a massage, everyone's a masseuse. So the triathlon coaching landscape is completely different to what it was back then. I think I still always lacked a little bit of confidence to actually stand up and say, I am a professional triathlon coach. That's what I do as a full-time occupation, and because I think people were still starting to just, triathlon was still a relatively niche sport, and people would think, how the hell can you make a living out of doing something like that? But yeah, as I mentioned, Andrew Mackay from Boost Coaching in Auckland and I sat down one day and said, look, why don't we combine our resources? And I think I always felt better working with someone as opposed to doing things on my own. And so that's where we started Fitter. And I felt I had more credibility with another person diving in and trying to do it as a full-time occupation. And we always, as I say, triathlon was definitely starting to take off, and lots of people were employing coaches, and we felt that I built enough profile potentially as an age group athlete that you might attract other age group athletes to be coached by you, especially if you were coaching yourself. So that's where it sort of started to gain a bit of momentum.
I think that's really interesting what you just said, that you felt you needed someone else that you weren't comfortable working with yourself. Did that just come back to that lack of the confidence that you didn't have at that time?
Yeah, totally. I think it's I think you and I might be a little bit similar here.
Yeah.
Mixers, and why we work so well on the podcast together is that it felt like, we both collectively feel quite comfortable in launching this together, because, it's always a problem shared is a problem halved. And then also it feels like both of you bring extra credibility to each other for whatever reason and validate what you're about to do. And I think also because I didn't have a formal education as such, that people might turn around and go, I think you need to be, more educated. And I think there's probably been a stigma that I've carried through my entire life, is that, I've probably, I have a lot of educated friends, and it's not that I feel inferior as such, but I think from the confidence of starting your own business and really stepping out and saying, I own this, on my own, this is who I am and this is what I have to offer. I think everyone has a little bit of that imposter syndrome in them. But I do think it's changeable, and I think it's definitely changed over the years as well.
Yeah, for sure. And so you and Andrew were together for a small amount of time, and then you just thought, actually, you know what, I've sort of got this. Yeah,
and I think it's based on what I just mentioned. I think it wasn't long before we actually gained some traction, but I just sort of felt at the time that the traction was coming a lot more from what I brought to the table. And so we decided to. And I think I then had enough confidence to say, hey, I think I can do this on my own. There were a whole host of opportunities being presented to our business that really only I could take up, because at that stage, even with my personal training qualification, it was more formal education that opened doors. And, like working for Vitality Works was, it was more about my personality and what I could bring to the table there. And as I gained a bit of confidence from that as well, I was like, people do tend to resonate with what I have to say. And therefore you've got to start to believe that that's for a reason, and that people, they're not looking and saying you don't know what you're on about. They're actually really enjoying how you convey that information or deliver that message, and therefore you've just got to be brave enough to be confident and say, hey, this is what I'm going to do, and I can do this on my own.
Yeah, and I think that's such a really good thing for young coaches coming through as well, like find your voice, have confidence, and don't think that you know it all, and think, that's the thing where sort of you notice in more immature, they sort of arrive at something going, sweet, I know exactly what all this is about. Like, so you're really good at that, you're constantly wanting to learn and stuff like that. But I think that confidence thing is so key.
Yeah. And I think that was a pretty crucial part of my life as to helping me understand that at times, as long as you have a thirst for knowledge and, you spend the time to understand what the pathways that you're trying to go down, and you also got to be able to step back and reflect on how people react to you, and not in a way that validates or taps you on the back to say, you're really good at your job or anything like that. It's more just that in that moment, are you someone that can convey information, and can you get it out to an audience, whether it's in a one-on-one or a group setting or something like that. And if you feel you can do that from that education standpoint, then there has to come a point in time where you actually go, I can do this. People believe in me and trust in me. And once you accept that, then you can do anything really.
Yeah, for sure. And of course, because with the launch of the podcast as well, that like Fitter changed from just being a sort of a local, national kind of like coaching business to, the world really does appear to be not your oyster, but it's so much more open to that sort of international environment. That's got to be a good thing.
Yeah, and that's credit to both of our work, to be fair, and that yourself. I mean, from a nutrition coaching standpoint, we know how many people that you've been able to connect with via the podcast as well, and I think I remember being told by a sports marketing guru up at AUT that we were ahead of the curve in launching a podcast. But you and I had been podcast listeners for years. We thought we were late to the party. We thought we were late to the party. But we also both knew that it for the podcasts that we listened to, how it removes geographical constraints. So whether we have just a strange accent, which you and I have been told a million times in feedback from UK listeners or American listeners saying we talk so slow, or we can't, or some people have told us that they put it on double the speed from different countries because New Zealanders have such a weird accent. But the information is the information. In this world now, it's information is unlimited, and if you can be a voice that appeals to people, that helps disseminate that information, then you don't have to just work within New Zealand when you have a podcast, and that's what happened. We knew that that's why we wanted to start it. But we didn't realise it would be as successful as it's actually turned out to be. So that, it certainly, serves its purpose.
For sure. And I think we were really lucky as well because I Am Talk had been going for a few years. And so you could see that a little podcast out of New Zealand could be really successful, so it wasn't like who would listen to us.
Yeah, totally. And I'll give those guys great credit. Bevan James Isles, especially because he was the one that kicked it off for I Am Talk, and John Newsom is the coach, and he's the sidekick to John Newsom, who brings the coaching side of it to it. But in a way, they were the impetus to say, I think I can do the same thing. But then equally so, they were the benchmark to try to actually exceed. And whether we've done that or not is immaterial. But we always could see, because I had something immediately to go, I like what they do here, but not necessarily what they do there. And then that opened my sort of investigating and listening to other triathlon podcasts and everything else. And do you know what? And it always, I don't know whether you remember this or not, is my thinking was, I want to do it with Mikki because she brings a completely different angle. She brings a female voice with an incredible sense of humor and a good ability to have a laugh, but has the science and the nutrition side of it, which other podcasts didn't quite have at that particular time. And so I was already like, we only have to get some traction here, and I'm convinced this is going to run. And ridiculously enough, we had no social media campaign behind this when we kicked it off. I remember Chris putting it up into the hosting platform, and a week later, 30 downloads and stuff like that.
That's dope.
But no social media, nothing. And organically. And to this day, we really haven't as well. And it's just been able to organically grow, which is, I think, testament to the quality of the content, which I hope, and I know that we receive lots of feedback on. And that's why it's become the beast that it actually is today.
Yeah, because it's more than a podcast, right? It's really sort of launched a whole side to, for me, for like the travel that I enjoy, for the legitimacy in the triathlon space that I could never have as an athlete, because I would never do a triathlon. I mean, oh no, I've done one. I've done the Special K and I've entered, but, like it's sort of like, oh, yeah, of course Mikki's going to be there.
Oh, totally.
Just to watch, just to enjoy.
Yeah, absolutely. Whereas, and I think a lot of people have learned a hell of a lot from the nutrition conversations that you and I have had on the podcast, because we're pretty much an open book. And I have been around the world with triathlon and have had people recognize my voice as I walk down the street talking to sound engineer Chris or someone like that, and come up and said, "Are you Bevan from Fitter Radio?" And then they'll go, "Where's Mikki?" Is Mikki here as well? And they're all looking around, and it's and we've been at events before where you and I have been, where people have recognised us, and it's I always maintain that it's bizarre because this is an audio podcast with no video or pictures of who we are or anything like that. You put it up into the internet and it goes out into the big wide world, and you have no idea where it's being drawn down from and who's actually listening to it. So it's,
and then of course you forget what you say every week. Then people come up and they're like, oh, what about this? And you just have to sort of like smile and nod.
Well,
yeah.
As an aside, I spoke to an athlete today or yesterday and asked her about a particular point about metabolic flexibility that she'd actually wanted to focus on and so forth. And this is a conversation that she has found from your podcast, Mikkipedia, that she wants to then factor into her thinking around nutrition for the work that she does back here with me as a coach. And that's the effect that this, information dissemination actually has where podcasts are concerned. And at times you have no idea who around the world is doing something because they heard it on Fitter Radio or they heard it on Mikkipedia.
I know, amazing, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's a real privilege, actually, I think, for, to have this platform to be able to influence people, hopefully in a positive way. Yeah.
I think it is. We laugh to this day about the fact that when does this stop? Because
I know,
the disappointment might be real. So,
do you know, I've sort of got a bit of a pit in my stomach. Like, I can't even imagine it. As long as there is Wi-Fi, Bevan.
Oh,
this will continue.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. No.
Yeah. So if I don't know whether you'll answer this question, but I am sort of curious because it's almost like asking, who's your favourite child? And I know no parent ever wants to answer that question, but like favorite athlete experience, not your athlete, but do you have what's your proudest coach moment?
Proudest coach moment. Interesting. A couple of different things. I am very proud privately of how I've tried to continue to evolve my coaching practice as best I can based on where I see sports science, health and well-being actually trending. But I've always maintained that, and I've said this even before it became probably a more popular catchphrase, that health comes before performance. And because you and I connect on both you and I are very, very strong believers in health and obviously about peak athletic performance. I think in trying to make sure that athletes are treated individually, I've had a lot of success in the female athlete space because I believe that there is a very big disconnect in ultra distance training and the belief that it's something that every athlete can factor into their lives without it having an adverse effect on their mental or physical health. And I think I even more so in recent times am of the belief that it is not something that can simply fit into everyone's life without poor outcomes occurring. And working on and mental health is a really big problem. Like actually, you and I just recorded yesterday, and we literally have had an interview with Jill Colangello, who's written her master's thesis on the prevalence of mental health issues in ultra distance, in ultra endurance sports. And so I think maintaining health is a primary focus before performance, because you can have both, but I wouldn't trade health for performance first. So I've had a lot of really personally pleasing moments, whether it's actually helping female athletes back to normal menstrual cycles, or whether it's actually, and this is all about nothing to do with their race results. So menstrual cycle function, mental health concerns that through different connections and colleagues, I've been able to navigate athletes back towards better balance in terms of their mental health. You know, these are things about just being a healthy human. And I think my fascination with the human condition is something that I always keep front and center of what we're trying to achieve as athletes. So I think, broadly speaking, health being not trading health in exchange for just optimizing performance has been one of the key areas that I've had a lot of successes in, and that's hugely pleasing for me. That's incredibly satisfying. Athletes, I know it's no it's no secret I love working with the pro athletes. I've had a lot of success with professional athletes, numerous, probably more race wins than I would care to imagine for a small little Kiwi coach down in this part of the world. I do remember it with great fondness, Braden Curry winning the Asia Pacific Champs in Cairns, where he was in a running battle with Javier Gomez and ran a 2:49.50 something to outrun Javier in that particular race. And I think the emotion at the finish line that was shared between Braden, sound engineer Chris, my partner, and myself was very real and very touching. And I think that was a pretty significant moment in his career and a validation of who he was as an athlete and the work that we'd done together. So, I mean, those are sort of the race highlights. But I could list of quite a few that felt like that at a finish line when a pro athlete achieves the goal that they've set out for themselves. So, yeah.
That's amazing, because what I see with you, Bevan, is that because of your focus on looking at the athlete holistically, I suppose, you're then forced to get so much more involved in their life, and so
tell me about it.
I wonder whether that extra investment, that's what makes you successful. But of course, it's such a giving a role that you have to play, and then you are. And this will be the same for any coach, I know, but it's never just about the sport. Your relationship counselor, you play, best friend, you play parent, you play all of those different roles, and it's almost expected that you do sort of as well. Like you're almost like the triathlete whisperer, aren't you?
Well, I think that's more my personality, but it's a huge benefit as a coach as well, because I think part of me, as I mentioned, is fascinated with the human condition, and I'm very much a humanitarian. So like do unto others, all that kind of stuff, But I also believe that I can have the greatest effect by being incredibly invested in the individual, but I can't do that halfway, and that's why I've always not tried to develop, a coaching business that doesn't do anything other than bespoke, personalized coaching. So I only want to, I need to work with an athlete. I need to care about the athlete. In some respects, they need to care about me as well, because it can't be just a one-way street, which is a very difficult thing in what is a incredibly selfish and at times requires selfishness to be an elite athlete in any sport. They don't necessarily become the most balanced humans because it's an obsessive 24-hour, 7-day-a-week fixation that they have, and so they've got to remove a lot of things out of their lives that don't actually necessarily help mold them as more balanced human beings. But no, I think I can. When care is at the center of the relationship and it's a two-way street, then really good things can happen, because people will respond to you if they feel that they are almost making you happy and you're making them happy. And that helps navigate the tough times as well, because there are probably as many tough times as there are, successful times, because sport is not linear, and fitness is not linear. And as I say, I enjoy finding out more about how someone ticks, both physically and emotionally.
Yeah, Bevan, have you got the balance right now? Like, you've moved from 2016, you had so many great race successes there, and that was sort of like this is a good place to sort of land.
Yep.
To then move to full-time coaching, but of course still training. Like, have you got that balance right for you in terms of training and do you miss the racing? Is there any part of you that sort of sees maybe not even Kona now, but world champs 2025? I don't know.
No, not at all. Like I actually, and probably what it informs my opinion now about the balance of ultra endurance training and amateur athletes' lives. To cut back to my own amateur career, I raced briefly as a pro, only because I turned 40, and I think again, you didn't need a pro license at 40 years of age, and I think I got third as a professional at Challenge Wanaka. I decided in the 40th year of my life I would do 4 Ironmans in 4 different continents as a bit of a coaching promotion as a professional. So I was something like 4th in Challenge Wanaka. I think I went to St. George and got 9th. I then went to Ironman Korea and got 3rd as a pro, that was awesome. And then I think I DNF'd at Ironman Wales with a couple of punches, which was an absolute pleasure to me at the time because I was completely burnt out at the end of the year.
That's right. I remember you telling me that.
Straight to the pub. But in the year that I finished triathlon, I won the 70.3 world champs here in the sunny coast in my age group, which was awesome. And then I went on to Kona and won the Kona 45 to 49 age group champs. And that nearly killed me. Like that took one of my 9 lives to win that race. And I think it exhausted my competitive drive to do the work that's required to win age group events in the future. And I didn't know it at the time, but I then had realized that my business as a coach had probably exceeded my ambitions as an athlete myself, and I couldn't do both. Because coaching is energy out. You're giving energy all the time to your athletes. You're not asking for it. You're providing energy to them in whatever way, shape, or form they require it. This is a finite amount of energy in a human being's body, and you can't do 25-hour training weeks and expect to be well balanced and impartial in your decision making without being fractious and irritable and tired and everything that goes along with it. So I have a number of times thought that I was going to say, do an event again, and there is zero desire to actually do it. But then, as I say, I think it's because every single event that I ever had in my future, I had to call on my event motivation. In the Kona race, that was the last time that I've ever towed any sort of start line in anger. So there is only so much energy in any individual that they can give out, and I needed more for my athletes than I needed for myself. So I'm in a very good space to coach effectively now.
Yeah. And I think that's another thing. So the first, maybe 20 or 30 minutes ago, we talked about having the confidence to find your voice and find your feet as a coach. And I think this would be another take home for any sort of new coach sort of coming into this space like that. You see it so often where you've got coaches that continue to race themselves, yet also try and coach. And either the coach themselves are carrying an injury, or potentially the athletes. I mean, you don't know what's going on, but it is just a tough ask to do both, I think.
I honestly think if you are working with elites, you can coach. You can provide a training plan. You can offer a service where they can talk to you in some respects. But there's a lot of critical thinking that goes on in coaching, and there's a lot of plannings and discussion and working out, especially at an elite level where physiology and the individualization of a training program and working out, not everything and not everyone reacts the same to training. And then also the emotion that goes with that. As I say, I'm a big believer that that with the chronic training loads required to do ultra-distance endurance events like Ironman, that it does upset the brain's ability to remain in a very balanced sort of homeostasis. And then when an athlete is emotional, the last thing they need is a coach that's emotional because they've done the same amount of training as the athlete. And clarity of thought is very difficult. Anyone who's done a 15 to 20 hour training week knows that you come home with the best intentions after training to do your work or have, do something socially or be with other people, and all you want to do is sit on the couch. And it's well, how can I be effective, and how can I say that I've given the clarity of thought required to this particular situation, the best of me, when I'm just a little bit rooted? Just to put it how it is, basically. Yeah. So I don't think you can do both effectively if you're trying to be the best coach that you can, and that's only my own personal opinion. Yeah,
of course. Bevan, training's always been such a big part of your life and continues to be. I'm trying to recall whether it was 2018 or 2019 when you pulled up with that pulmonary embolism.
That's right.
Talk to me about that. I'm really interested to, did you think, the writing's on the wall? Was that a scary moment for you, or we were just like,
Probably more Chris, because Chris and I, and I think I could be criticised for this because I'm not detail oriented, and because I don't. I tend to probably think big picture. You and I are similar to this. We think, big picture. Yeah. We give Barry and Chris the job to work out how these things are going to operate. And so I, in flying back from the UK, did an 18-hour leg from the London to Doha or whatever it was. Ended up getting off the plane, having a little bit of leg pain, and then all of a sudden chest pain and back pain, and found that I had blood clots on the lungs and everything that went with it. I don't know. I think because, someone asked me the other day, actually, do you think what else do you want to achieve? And I'm really happy where I am. I'm absolutely over the moon where I am in terms of what I've been able to achieve. I still want to be better every day, but I don't have this nagging sense of not being able to have done everything that I want. I know so many athletes out there just looking for that one more PB or that, and one more
last time to Kona
or something like that. And look, it is easier having had a lot of success as an age group athlete, for sure. I know I've been criticised of that in the past, of being maybe a little bit, I don't know, a bit au fait with whether it's other athletes that are still striving to get back there or to qualify or whatever it is. A bit more ambivalent about that kind of stuff because I have had some good results. But no, I sort of had the blood clots, and it was Chris tries to remind me how it was more a life and death situation than I actually gave it credit for. And I suppose in some respects it was. They were undiagnosed for nearly, probably 2+ weeks, and they were fairly sizable. But I've always, and it annoys Chris, and I know it annoys Chris, that I just don't take it seriously, because until I probably cark it and I'm in the grave, I think I'm invincible. I think I'm invincible. So I'm and maybe now at 50 years of age, I'm starting to feel the wear and tear a little bit in certain areas, but I still think back in my mind, it's like, well, if I need to ride 6 hours with Hannah tomorrow, I can do that. And if I want to jump in the pool, I can still swim with her. I can't run with her.
We'll just put that out.
We'll just put that out there now. But no, I think I was able to move through that. And I do believe that it was in my lifelong obsession with staying fit that I was able to also recover from that. Because by the specialist's own admission, when I went in 6 months afterwards, after being on the blood thinners and so forth, all remnants of scarring had actually improved as well, which is not typically the case with the lung damage. And I proffered the suggestion to them that maybe it was because once I was allowed back to train, that the function of lung being stressed had actually helped that scar tissue break down and then actually heal itself. And they said, look, maybe that was definitely the case. And so I'm luckily enough, I have zero lingering effects from something that could have been the end of me as such, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
So no, and I've always been able to put those things behind me. I mean, Chris even now will worry about me going on another we may be due to fly shortly. She said, you're going to get aspirin, you're going to get on the blood thinners before you fly. And I was like, I hadn't even thought about it, Chris.
Actually strange. Do you know what, just as an aside, I'm pretty sure that there's not a big benefit from taking aspirin for the plane.
Oh, don't say that, because Mikki, lucky sound engineer Chris is not going to edit this.
As an editing it
because she'd have been straight on to Google, Dr. Google.
I know.
Because if I take it, Chris will be happy.
Oh, that's true. Actually, that's the placebo effect for Chris and not necessarily for you.
I'll just get up. I must admit, I do move much more than I was pretty active on a flight. But when you get an 18-hour leg from Heathrow to Doha or whatever it was, you just get over it, and you try to sleep too much and the like. But I'll be fine. Don't panic.
Yeah. No panicking here. Okay, Bevan. So I was actually going to ask, where do you see, have you achieved what you want to in your business? And it sort of sounds to me like, and I might be wrong, that because of the place that you're in, and you just said you're really happy with where you're at. I think you're always going to be learning. I mean, that's the thing. And your job puts you in that position. So I think that's quite a satisfying thing. Yeah. Actually.
Yeah. I would like to, it's not that I'm after better results or a major race win or anything like that with my athletes. I actually think as I get old and from a business perspective and from a coaching perspective, I would like to spend some time just working with potentially a small handful of athletes where a lot of what modern coaching does when you are a privately a private enterprise like I am and you are in business is that there is a certain critical mass that you need in order to make things profitable. And there's two ways you can go in this game. You either charge more and coach fewer athletes, or you charge less and you coach a lot. And I would actually prefer to get to a point, and not for a financial benefit, but I would like to spend some time working with one or two of my pros in the most intensive relationship that we can sustain, so that I can really tick the boxes of everything that I would hope to be able to do with those athletes, that sometimes the demands of coaching more athletes doesn't give you the time to do. And just to see whether that got them to a better level of performance than they've ever been before, because there is a tipping point. I mean, you can't, honestly, I remember seeing a poll go out on Twitter not long ago from some very high-level cycling coaches asking their audience, how many professional or elite athletes do you think a full-time coach can successfully work with at any one time? And most of the consensus was not any more than 3 to 6 was too much. And 10 at an absolute stretch, but you'd need probably assistant coaches and other support staff. And we don't, I mean, we've definitely grown our business to the point where we have, Dr. Nick Gill, who's the All Black strength and conditioning coach, helping us with strength and conditioning, and Dr. Claire Badenhorst, who works as our physiologist. And we've had Crystal Hockley go through Cliff Harvey's nutrition coaching. So we've got obviously your intellect that we can call on as well, and input. So we do have our small, skill set that is highly professional and highly educated that we call on. But I'd love to be able to really just drill down into that and really apply that to a few athletes, just to see if that made a difference to their performance. And I think that would be where I'd eventually like to be in another couple of years where coaching's concerned. And then just to see whether, what does that happen for that athlete and where they can actually get to. Yeah,
for sure. And is that in an environment much like the sort of training camp for months at a time somewhere with these athletes, the way that you see a lot of sort of I guess triathletes and runners and stuff do.
Yeah, and we've been doing that for a few years anyway. If you think of our business, we're highly mobile. I think it's why we've worked with a lot of professional athletes. You know, I've done a lot of training camps with Braden Curry, a lot of training camps with Jocelyn McCauley. In more recent times, Hannah Wells. You know, this training camp, COVID restrictions included, is possibly going to be maybe 5 to 6 months long, which is basically flat mates rather than actually training camp. But no, and I love that hands-on day-to-day stuff. You can use less and less data when you can see more of the athlete, and we constantly adjust sessions. The technology that's out there at the moment, I think to a certain degree exists because of remote coaching relationships. Yeah. But when you can do it on a day-to-day basis with an athlete, it's incredibly fulfilling, and I think you can be very quick in your decision making and very effective in what happens within each workout as well. And look, at the end of the day, it does what we all do, which is travel around the world and chase the summers. So
totally
can't be too bad.
Not at all. Hey, Bevan, I've just got one last question to ask you, which is completely unrelated, actually.
Well, what should I do with my training tomorrow?
Yeah. Is that all right? Yeah. Which band should I go and listen to? What's your favourite meal, Bevan?
What is my favourite meal? Okay, favourite meal. Anything that sound engineer Chris cooks.
Oh.
And I say that honestly because
she's a great cook.
Training camp. Oh, absolutely. Like we're a very tight unit traveling around the world at the moment, and Chris comes with me as much as she can because she'll never accept this, but she is integral to me being able to do my job because she supports me in an environment that allows us, and she's a fantastic foil for the, a bit of the ups and downs of what coaching and athletes go through when they're working together closely. But I honestly, I'm not going to tell you exactly, Emil, but Chris, to anyone who's worked with us closely as athletes, would probably not disagree with me to say that anything that Chris cooks will be their next favourite meal. Yeah. And quite frankly, upstairs, this is what happened, no word of a lie. Chris literally slipped I think it's a keto cookbook under Hannah's nose and said, "Tonight, Hannah, you have to choose what meal we're going to have," which Hannah is always reluctant to do because she feels like she's been catered for and looked after, but that's what Chris does. Yeah. And I think it's an Asian pork mince ball in lettuce cup concoction.
Oh, amazing.
And it's like, as of tonight, Mikki, that will be my favourite meal.
Yeah, I don't doubt it. Oh, delicious, Bevan. Well, hey, thanks so much for having a chat. Do you know, and I find it so funny that I actually did learn quite a bit about you from in your early years, because I had no idea about the sort of the progression of sort of Bevan through the ages, Bevan the athlete to Bevan the personal trainer, not really, to Bevan the coach. Like, it's really interesting.
Oh, it's awesome, man. And thank you for asking me to come on the podcast. As I said to you, Mikki, a lot of our success as a business has come down to the podcast, and the work that you and I do together has been, as I say, I think we said to each other when we had I don't know what it is now. I think we had 1.5 million downloads of our podcast over the years. I mean, it's been an absolute joy to do the work that you and I do together, and long may it continue. And so you are part of why Fitter is what it is for a coaching business and a podcast as well. So I'm more than happy to come on and have a chat to you.
Awesome, mate. And thank you, because without you, this wouldn't be happening on my own platform. So
well,
thanks,
you with a professional microphone and headphones and everything like that in front,
I don't do things by halves.
I can
do you remember?
concur.
Yeah. Well, I bought a Cervelo, remember? For that one race that I then pulled out of. I mean, ridiculous. It's just how I roll. But at least this is getting much more use than that time trial bike ever got. So there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, as I say, pleasure chatting to you, and we'll catch up for Fitter Radio next week.
Awesome. All right, team, hope you enjoyed that as much as I enjoyed bringing that to you. Such a fun conversation, and you pretty much, it was like being a fly on the wall for any conversation that Bev and I will have before jumping on Fitter Radio podcast to bring you the goods there. So although I did learn a little bit, in fact it was quite funny because I kept calling him an elite triathlete, and you heard him, he was like, oh come on Mikki, I was never an elite triathlete. But you know, that's what he's known as, and he certainly did spend some time up there competing with the best during his time. But not now. I mean, he's pretty old, so you know, now he's just a coach. Anyway, I'm not sure. I wonder whether he'll pick me up on that. So next week on the podcast, guys, so excited. I have one of my running heroes. I'm sitting down and chatting to Dina Caster, who is a former Olympic marathon champ in the US, an amazing runner. I followed her career when she was at the peak of it. She's been to 3 Olympic Games. In amongst all of her other success across the running spectrum, we have such a good conversation about mindset, about what it took for her to be the best in her running endeavours, and how she stays sort of involved now. And it was a real delight to talk to Dina. So that's next week. Until then though, you can catch me over on Facebook at Mikki Williden Nutrition, over on Instagram and Twitter at Mikki Williden, or on my website mikkiwilliden.com, where you can book a consultation, sign up to a number of my meal plans which are focused on fat loss, keto longevity plan, just eating a decent diet, where you also get provided with shopping lists, access to the members only portal and Facebook group, my weekly email, and the opportunity to pick my brain about anything nutrition related. I will put those links in the show notes for you, and you have a great week. Catch you next week.